welcome to my booktube. My name's Sarah and this is my very first video. I figured for the first video I can just tell y'all a little bit about me and why I wanted to start this channel, and then we can do some of my book tags. Like I said, my name's Sarah. I'm currently a senior at Clemson University and I'm majoring in secondary math education, so I want to teach high school math. I'm gonna talk about it. But I'm going to grad school, so I do have another year before I'll start teaching. What else do you need to know about me? I don't even know. So first up is, why do I want to make this channel? So I've been considering making a booktube for a little while now. I started a bookstagram about a year ago, and it's been really fun to do and just to document my reading, even though I haven't kept up with it as much as I should. But life gets busy and things happen, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that a YouTube channel will help me keep up with that a little more. But taking pictures of the books I read, writing reviews about them, has helped me kind of put my thoughts into words and into concise thoughts and not just feelings, if that makes sense. Like when I read a book, I just kind of feel if I like it or not, and before I tried to put those feelings into thoughts and words, it was just like, oh, I like the book because I feel like I liked it, or it felt like a good book. But now I feel like I can go into books with a better understanding of what makes a good book for me, and that helps me narrow down what I want to read and spend my money on. Because if you can't tell, this is like nothing compared to what some of the booktubers have, but for someone who does not have a booktube until right this moment, this is a fairly big bookshelf, and I will say I've not read any of the books on here. I have two separate bookshelves. One here, this is my college apartment, so these are all the books I haven't read yet, and when I finish a book I take it home. That bookshelf is a bit messy, so I don't know if I will be sharing that with you quite yet, but I'll put them on my bookshelf at home. And so I'm hoping once I move into a house I can take both bookshelves and I can have a bookshelf of all of my finished books and one of the books I'm wanting to read. I will say the one at home is the exact same size as this, filled about the same, but there are two shelves on the other one that are also books I've not read yet. So I have a total of 118 books that I have yet to read. And that is just absolutely insane. And there's no reason for me to have that many books that I haven't read. And there's no reason for me to continue to purchase books that I put on this bookshelf. I've had some of these for like 4 or 5 years. So part of me making this book channel is to work on my TBR, because I think if I have themed videos and I'm reading for a specific purpose, I'm much more likely to finish the books and get them off this bookshelf so I can buy more. So yeah. Alright, now to the meat of this video, my book tags. I've watched a couple different book tag videos. I just took some of the questions that I enjoyed and that I thought I would like to answer and that tell you the most about who I am as a reader. So if these questions are stupid and you don't actually care about them, but you do have more questions, just let me know and I will answer those. Alright, my first question, what got me into reading? So growing up I wasn't a huge reader. It wasn't until like middle school, I guess, that I started trying to read, but I had very specific times and places I would read. I would only read on vacation at the beach, by the pool, or sitting in a chair at the ocean. And that was it. Once vacation ended, I did not read again until the next vacation. So I read maybe 2 or 3 books a year, but when I would read, I was completely immersed in the stories and like I genuinely loved reading, but it was only for those times. And during that time I typically read like YA mystery. There was one specific book, I'm gonna have to find it, I think about it all the time, like it genuinely might still be one of my favorite books even though it was probably terrible, but I think about it a lot. I have a picture of me reading it also, And I think that's where I started getting into reading. And so then coming to Clemson was about the same, just reading casually, until I met my best friend. Her tag is Ashton Buy Books. She would always carry a book around. She was always talking about books, and I can remember hanging out with her and some of her friends, and she would ask me like, oh, do you know this book or whatever, and I'm like, no, I have no clue what you're talking about, but the other people would know, and I always felt a little left out of those conversations because I didn't read at the time, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna start reading just so I can stop with the FOMO, and I did that. When I decided that I was gonna try to start reading and put effort into that, I set a goal for 15 books that year, and I ended up reading 32, and then this past year, that was 2 years ago, this past year I set a goal for 40 books, and I read 36. So I stopped just short, but I did take a lot of breaks during the school year because my classwork just got to be a lot. I also am extremely addicted to my phone, so it seems kind of counterintuitive that I would start a YouTube channel when I'm trying to stay on my phone less, but I think if I'm using my time on my phone to record me like reading and making videos about reading, I think my time will be a little more productive and it won't be spent just scrolling on my phone, maybe like getting ideas and things like that, but I think I'll be able to use my time for a specific purpose. Also, I am a Christian and my faith is a really big part of my life, and it is March 3rd. Nope, that is such a lie. It is March 2nd today. March 4th is the start of Lent, and I decided that I'm going to give up social media up until Easter. So I think having that time off will give me a chance to start this booktube and using that extra time that I would have spent on my phone to read and talk about books and make videos. So that got off track a lot, I feel like. But what got me into reading was Ashton, and now I love it, and I want to spend all of my time doing that. So, moving on. What are my book goals for this year? So, I have this book journal I started last year. It is my prized possession. I love it. I love to show people it. I unfortunately did kind of stop halfway through the year, so some of it is not filled out the way it should be. But in my book journal, I always write my goals at the front to help me kind of look back and remember what I want to do this year. This was last year's goals. I don't know why I feel like I need to tell you. I guess you can see how my goals have shifted over the year because, again, I am still pretty new to just reading in general and focusing my reading on things like goals and rating and stuff like that. So my goal for last year was to read 40 books. Did not reach that goal. That's okay. I also wanted to learn to rate books more intentionally. I really base my reading on my feelings that I have in the past. So if I didn't absolutely hate a book, it was a 5-star for me. And I just wanted to be able to talk about books a little more specifically and in depth and be able to identify like what I like in a book, what I don't like in a book, why I like this, why I don't like that, and be able to compare the books I read. Because I think that just makes for better conversations about them, and it helps me to enjoy the book a little more if I know specifically what I loved about it. So I wanted to work on that. I do think I did a good job. I gave my first ever 1-star review. It was a 1.5 star, but I gave my first ever 1.5 star to a book, and I was really proud because before the lowest I'd given a book was like maybe 3.5, but nothing below that. So we're still working on that and getting better at it, but that was a goal for last year. I also wanted to only buy 1 to 2 books a month, with the exception of my birthday and vacations. I do feel like I failed this goal. Not really sure, but I do think I failed. Regardless, I've spent way too much money on books, so that goal should probably stay. And then another goal I did not complete is to read 1 TBR book a month. I did not do that. And to me, the TBR book was a book that I've had on my shelf for at least 1.5 years, 2 years. So those are the books I have at home. The books I have here are my newer ones, or books that I'm really excited for the books at home. Are some that I bought a long time ago that I don't really have the urge to read anymore, but I refuse to sell them, so I'm gonna have to read them. But I didn't do that year. I read maybe 2 TBR books. The rest were books that I've had in 6 months or less. So that brings us to the goals for this year. They're very similar because, like I said, I didn't meet most of the goals for last year, but I did really like those goals. So 2025 goals. Trying to read 40 books again this year because I didn't meet it last year, but I do think I might end up making this a little higher. Maybe we might do like a mid-year check-in because I read a lot more books at the beginning of the year in January, and so I was like, oh, I've read so many books this month, maybe I should make this higher. But then I only read 2 books in February, so I can't tell if it's like I'm gonna read a lot of books in all of the months like I did in January, or if I'm gonna read just the bare minimum. So we'll see. It may be higher, may stay the same. I refuse to go lower though, because I'm going to read at least 40. So the next one is to read at least 1 chapter every day. I've already failed this. There was like a week or so that I didn't read anything because I just didn't have time. No, I had time. I didn't make time, and I'm working on that. And so from here on out, I'm gonna read at least 1 chapter a day. Next is to read more than I write on my phone. I don't do that. I failed that miserably already. Hoping Lent will help me get back on track with that and spend a lot less time on my phone, more time reading books, and just being intentional with my time. This is less about I need to read all the time and more about I need to stay off my phone. And I'm trying to incentivize that in any way I can so that I actually stick to it. So, we'll see. Last one. Buy no more than 12 books this year, 1 per month. I've definitely not bought 12 books this year so far. I know I bought 1 this weekend. I went on a retreat with my sorority in the mountains, and we went to this cute bookstore, and so I bought this mainly because it was on sale. I wasn't going to buy anything, but it was only $10, and it looks cute. It's about this lady who her husband passes away, but he really loved lists, and he leaves her one last list that says find D. She thinks D is her best friend Dot, who she hasn't spoken to in like 60 years. I'm not really sure what happened. I guess we'll find out why they haven't spoken. But she's trying to track down Dot. And yeah, I didn't actually finish the synopsis on the back. I just picked it up and went with it because it was on sale. So this is one book I bought. I'm sure I bought a book this past month, but I don't see it on my shelf, so I'm gonna say I didn't, and so I've been doing good with that. I'm really trying not to buy any more books because I have realized how insane my TBR is, and there's no reason I should have that many books that I have not read. So I think I can do good on those, but those are my goals for the year. What is my favorite book? So like I said, whenever I finish reading a book, I take it home and put it on that bookshelf, so I don't have any of my physical books that I've already read with me, except for the one I just read the other day, but I can pull up pictures of it. Daisy Jones and the Six. I absolutely adore this book. I read it for the first time, not this past summer, but the summer before, and the way she writes her world and her characters is just so good. I also read this after reading Malibu Rising, and so I really loved seeing her connect the characters in both stories. This is before I realized that she did that for the 4 books within this kind of world. I really loved hearing names being thrown out that I already know about, and I felt more connected to the characters in the story, seeing them all throughout. And then I watched the show right after I finished the book. Oh my gosh. This is just a work of art. I don't know how else to explain it. This is such a good show and book, and you should watch it, read it, listen to it, do whatever right now. The effort the cast put into the music is insane to me. Like going to music camp like all day, every day, and becoming a like actual band like they are, Daisy Jones and the Six, and they put out that record. They were gonna go on tour. Are you kidding? That's the coolest thing ever. And I just love that kind of effort being put into these things. And I love seeing the way that directors will make a book come to life, and they absolutely killed this. So that's my favorite. This is my favorite book series. This is tough. Great question. I'm so glad you asked. I think I have to go with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I read this 2 years ago and I absolutely loved it. I pretty much started out reading mystery books when I was in high school and younger, and so I really have a heart for mystery, suspense, and this book was just written so well. And I love YA books, but sometimes it feels very childish. But the writing here did not feel YA. Like, it felt like I was just reading a normal mystery book from the perspective of a high schooler. And I loved the characters. I loved, is it Poppy? I feel like her name is Poppy, but I honestly don't remember. Oh my gosh, I forgot this was made into a show. Pip! Just really love Pip and Robbie. I think they're such strong characters and I love them working together. The first one was so good to me. I also loved the second one. I've not had a book make me cry as hard. I might have cried harder at some other books, but I really did like sob at the end of the second one. And the third one was a bit infuriating, but I loved that the book could do that to me and could cause those kind of feelings for me. So this is such a good series, and it just reminds me of kind of what got me going with reading. Like, these books typically got me out of a slump, and I read them so quick and I just devoured it and I loved it so much. So my favorite book series. It has been my favorite book of 2025 so far that I've read. So I've read a total of 8 books so far. I read 6 in January and I read 2 in February. And I need to look back at what I read because I don't even remember. So this past year, Ashton and I finished the Natural series. I started it 2 years ago that was my first book I posted on my Bookstagram. And then I read the second one, which is Killer Instinct, about halfway through the year. And then I went back and I read All In, Bad Blood, and 12 back to back in January. This was such a good series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love Criminal Minds. I love the mystery feeling, and I loved how distinct each of the characters were and their roles within the group dynamic. And it was like they couldn't function without each other, and I really enjoyed that. And the stories were also, like, the plot was so well done for me. So that whole series is 5-star. I think I gave every book a 5-star. And my favorite was Killer Instinct, but my favorite out of the books I read this year, I think, would have to be All In. This one was set in casinos, and I really liked that setting. I am a math person. That's what I want to teach, and so I really liked the way they incorporated like actual mathematical ideas and language and things like that into the book, and it felt really cool for me to see those and understand them, and also be able to connect things that I've learned in the past and like my actual math studies, and see those come to life in a book and see how they use those to create this plot and this really cool idea, and the way the characters use that to help them through the crime and like solve the mystery and stuff. And so that was really interesting for me, and it was something I absolutely loved. So I think that's been my favorite book so far. Next is my least favorite so far this year. I used to have a really hard time saying I didn't enjoy a book or I didn't like a book because I felt bad for saying that when someone put so much effort into writing a book, and I don't want anyone to think that because I don't like a book that it's a bad book. I don't believe there are bad books. And so I try to just not say anything about a book I don't enjoy. But I do think it's important for me to talk about those now, especially if I'm starting a channel. If there are people who are watching this that like the same things I do and you don't want to waste your time on a book you know you're not going to enjoy, then I should give you an honest review. So I can honestly say my least favorite was Leather and Lark. I really like a cool plot line, and so I read Butcher and Blackbird last year, and I thought the plot was really interesting. I love Criminal Minds, and so I love the serial killer aspect of it. I did kind of zone out halfway through the book. I think it was during like finals, or I was reading at a time where I had a lot going on, so I wasn't focused on it, so I don't remember much about the book, and I think that's why I kept going and read the second one. I do wish I wouldn't have. It just wasn't for me. I was nervous to see how they were going to follow up the first book when the first one was centered around these two people being serial killers. So what do you do when it's about your friends or like the sister or whatever. I think they did an okay job of like finding a story for them. It's just not a story I was interested in. I also refuse to DNF books. I think I've only DNF'd one book before, and I plan to go back to it. So it's just not something I can do. I did give this one 2.5 stars because, well, for one, I loved the playlist that they made, and so they have a playlist for every single chapter, and I really like that as someone who likes to listen to music while I'm reading to help me focus. So it's really cool to like have music in the background that helped me immerse myself in the story, help me focus and like actually get through reading it. But another reason one reason I didn't like it is because I listened to part of it on audiobook, but I hated the voice actor's voice because the guy in this book is Irish, and it was just really uncomforting. And I didn't like it, and some of the things they say just made me cringe, and it was not fun. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I just read it all the way through, but I didn't, and that's on me. Also, I didn't like the ending. I thought they just kind of threw that in out of nowhere, and I guess the main antagonist comes in out of nowhere too, so it's very obvious who it is, in my opinion, and I didn't like that. I want to be surprised, and that was the least surprising thing of the book, so I didn't like that at all. But yeah, don't recommend. Where do you read? I read quite literally anywhere I can. I've started taking a book with me everywhere so that when I have time to read, I can read, because being a college student is really tough, especially on my schedule, because I have to work outside to afford life. And by the time I get home, I'm usually tired and it's late and I'm ready to go to bed to start my day. I have had to take a break from bringing books with me to campus because when I do, I'm more likely to read the book than study. But with me planning to get off my phone more, I think I will have more time to read and study. So I'm going to start taking them with me more. But my favorite place to read is somewhere outside, specifically by a body of water, if possible. We have a little lake access point here at Clemson. It's called Y Beach, and I love to go sit out there. There's like sand on the lake as the waters splash up, and it just feels like the beach, which is where I first started reading, and so it really gets me in the mood to read again. But I just love being outside in the sun. I love warm weather, so I've not been having a good time with this weather lately. But once it warms up, I'm hoping to go outside a lot more and find places to read by the pool or by the lake or just on campus or wherever I can outside. Kind of in the book, I wanted to do my February wrap up and talk about the books I read, the goals I had, and things like that, and go into March and what I'm hoping to read and goals for that month. So if we look back at February, not a great month for reading. I read 2 books. So I started this book on February 1st and I finished it on the 5th. But my first book read of the month was The House Across the Lake. I had a friend who's been telling me to read this. She read it and thought it was pretty good and that I would enjoy it. I love a mystery and I love a good plot twist. And I feel like this one covered the plot twist criteria. I did not expect it, mainly because like if you've read the book, you just wouldn't expect that. I don't think that's kind of bringing in a whole new element into the story, which I enjoyed. I think it was done fairly well. I do think got a little repetitive there towards the end, and they added it in a little more than needed, but I still thought it was good. It was entertaining. I liked the book, so I gave that 4.5 stars. That was a good one to start the month off with. Unfortunately, the next and last book I read that month, that sounds bad because I actually really enjoyed this book. It's unfortunate that I only read 2 books after starting with such a good book like The House Across the Lake. But the second and last book I read this month, which I actually finished 2 days ago, was Every Last Word. This book was so good to me. I really enjoyed it. I've had it on my bookshelf for a little while now. I think this book was pretty popular. I've heard some things about it, but not too much, so I didn't know what it was about until I started reading. But I really enjoyed the plot, I love the characters. And then I guessed the plot twist like one chapter before it happened, but it didn't make it any less sad. And I just wanted to give this girl a hug. But I really liked the ending. I thought it was very fitting, and I enjoyed the book a lot. I think it was a great book to end the month on, and I gave this one also 4.5 stars. As far as my goals for February, I wanted to read 3 or 4 books, and then Ashton and I had planned to buddy read Happy Place. I love Emily Henry's writing, and I've not read Happy Place or Funny Story yet. My sister got me Funny Story for Christmas, so I have to try to finish Happy Place before I read Funny Story. I just feel like I have to read them in order. I don't know if you have to, but I want to. So we were going to read this over Valentine's Day, but I did not get to that. I think she started it. I don't know if she finished it, but I have not read this yet. So this kind of moves me on to my March goals. I think I would like to read Happy Place. I'm hoping the weather will be a little nicer and I might can find some time to be outside, because I've only read Emily Henry's books in the spring or summer when I could be outside. So I want to keep the tradition up to read this one. Also, just in general, I want to read 4 books in March. I have my spring break for Clemson March 14th through the 21st, so I'm gonna have like a week and a half where I can just read. I'm hoping to finish maybe 2 books during that spring break. So pivoting a little into Easter, I am working on being more intentional about reading my Bible every day and studying that, and so I also want to read some supplemental materials, I guess. I read Mere Christianity and the Screwtape Letters over Christmas break, and so I may want to read other like Christian theology books like that to kind of help me prepare for Easter. That is all that I have. Thank you for listening in. Please let me know if you have any book video ideas. I'd love to do some of your ideas. I'll add my bookstagram if you want to follow that. Hope you'll have a great time reading, and I will see you somewhere else. So, bye!